Good morning, Internet friends, and welcome to Dev Update number 6. I've basically finished with all of the Cardano related code now, and I've made 2 different videos to show you how it works. This one is the tour of the codebase, so if you just want to see the demo, you can skip to update number 7 now. In this video, I'll show you how the on-chain and off-chain code interact, and then within the off-chain code, we'll look at the different types of nodes, the core code that goes into each node, and take a quick look at the test suite. As usual, the code is reproducible, so here's how you can fetch it and follow along yourself if you want to. Today we'll be looking in the milestone 2 publish and verify directory. There are 2 different Nix develop shells here, one for the on-chain code and one for the off-chain code. We'll look at the on-chain one first and just kind of zoom through it because it's a recap of what was in the last dev update. The main thing I want to show here is just that it compiles to these 2 JSON files, electionplutus.json and electionplutustraced.json. So you have to build those files before you can do anything in the off-chain code, which I'm going to show you in a minute. Okay, to run the off-chain code, we need to start a couple of Docker images first. I'm using the simplest architecture I can think of for this, which is just that all the Python code talks to one Cardano node and one IPFS node. And then there's also this thing Ogmios, which is just a little API helper that makes it easier to query the node for UTXOs. That reminds me, there's one caveat to the reproducible code thing for today, which is that as of this video, the Cardano node has just been upgraded to version 11, but there hasn't been a corresponding Ogmios release yet. So I'm actually running a custom version that I hacked together based on some work in progress on GitHub. Some of it is from IOHK and some of it is from this guy. I think his name is John Alatosky. So thanks, John, for that. And if you're watching this video in the future, and hopefully there's been an Ogmios release by then, and I will have updated the Docker Compose, so hopefully you can ignore this. Alright, now we go into the off-chain Nix develop shell. The other thing you need in order to run this stuff is you need a test wallet funded with ADA from the preview testnet faucet. And I'll show you my dev wallet address here. And later we can look at things going on in the block explorer. Now we can run the PyTest suite. The local tests are fast, but the testnet tests are very slow. They take up to around 40 minutes. That's partly because blockchains are slow, and partly because PyTest is running each transaction sequentially. I'll go into more about what the tests are doing in the next video. So for now, let's take a little tour of the codebase. It all centers on this concept of an election node, which is all the software that one person needs to interact with an election. So what goes into a node? The first thing is the election context, which is all the static settings needed to describe this particular election. And most importantly, that includes the compiled Plutus JSON blueprint that you saw earlier, but now parameterized to be for a specific election with a specific one-shot UTXO. Next is the publisher, which is where all the PyCardano code lives for creating and submitting transactions corresponding to the contract operations. And because it submits transactions, this is also the part that needs your wallet. Finally, there's a subscriber, and the main thing it does is keep an up-to-date history of all the actions that everyone's done in the election so far. To explain that part, I have to back up a minute and draw the Cardano stuff. So there's a node, right? And then there's an Ogmios instance that talks to the node and gives it an easier to use API. And then the node is, of course, talking to other peers on the Cardano network. The publisher is submitting transactions to Ogmios and checking to see when they're confirmed. The subscriber is also separately running another process called Kupo, which is a lightweight chain indexer, and it also talks to Ogmios, but it's watching for anything that happens on the network that affects one of the tokens with our policy ID. And whenever there's a matching event, it appends it to the history. The subscriber also has a callback function so that you can tell it what code you want run whenever a relevant event happens. And I expect that to be very useful when writing the election interface next. Okay, so that's the base functionality that's shared by any election node, and it's most of what makes up ElectionGuard core. There's also this section called nodes, which has various subclasses of node, and they mainly differ so far in which types of transactions they can submit. They all post public records, and then there are these two unique ones, funder and admin, that have a lot of custom code. Building these out is kind of the next frontier in milestone 3 because this is where I'll be writing, for example, in the device node, how to display a ballot interface and do the voting, and in the Guardian node, how to do the Guardian key ceremony and things like that. The distinction between funder and admin is the funder is the person who initially creates the election and funds it from their wallet, and that may or may not be the same as the admin. They're separate so far, but I haven't decided yet. I might merge them into one thing in the final release. I'm not sure which way people would prefer yet. The other thing that I'm probably going to change is I think I want to merge the verifier code into the base class because I really want everyone to be verifying everything by default. And then the last section to look at is the test suite. Just a couple quick things here. One is that I'm reusing the same set of static election artifacts that I used in the earlier ACON tests. So all the content identifiers and the admin transaction numbers and everything match up exactly. But now I'm actually generating new wallets for all the participants and giving them running nodes, and they all communicate in real time. And probably the most important new check here is that after every phase of the election, I test that every participant has the correct current state of the contract and that they all agree exactly on the history of the election so far. Oh, and there's some custom code related to, in case anything goes wrong in any of the tests, the funder has an extra function that will load the private keys of the generated wallets and sweep their collateral back into the main dev wallet, just so I avoid losing a bunch of little bits of collateral every time if there's a mistake. This has been Dev Update 6. Join me next time and I'll go over the publish and verify demo, which is the last part of milestone 2.